It's not always about who you know at all. It's about continuous, like not taking no for an answer. You've got to be a bit of a bulldog, and you've just got to kind of come at everyone from different directions. If a strategy is not working or you're not getting the response that you're wanting to get, change your strategy, change what you're wanting to say.
Hi, and welcome to the Bright Minds of eCommerce podcast. I'm Dana, founder of Bright Red Marketing, and I created this podcast because I wanted to bring you the best advice from Australian experts in eCommerce and eCommerce store owners. If you're wanting relatable stories and actionable advice and the latest Facebook advertising strategies, you're in the right place. So let's get into today's episode. Hi, and welcome to the Bright Minds of eCommerce podcast. Today we're here with Eve from Eden Communications. Welcome, Eve.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
So nice to have you on the show. So can you explain what exactly is PR?
I think the definition of public relations has changed a lot in the last decade, and it's quite a broad thing because a lot of people will tell you that it encases a whole bunch of different things, but at its root cause, public relations is the very careful creation, management, structuring of a person or a brand's identity within the public and their reputation, hence the public and the relations side of what it's titled. So that's the root definition of it. But yeah, I think in terms of what that encapsulates, it's changed a lot over the last few years.
Yeah. How does that sort of play into an e-commerce store? Because I feel like a lot of people, when they think about PR, they think about getting press for their business, and that's kind of where it sits. How does that public relations fit into that e-com world?
So in terms of an e-com business, I guess there's two pathways you could be looking at in regards to how PR might weave into your overall business strategy. And that's both profiling the owner and their expertise and building up their reputation in market, as well as, I guess, their niche in the market and what makes them special, as well as making sure that the public have really good brand recall around the e-commerce business, what products they sell. Similar to if you say, name a soft drink, what one do you want to tell me?
You think of Coca-Cola. I don't even drink Coca-Cola, and that's what I'm thinking of.
Exactly. So the work of public relations would be to make sure that whatever products you're selling or services, but mostly products, obviously, if they say, oh, okay, I sell AirPods or I sell earphones, then they're going to think of your brand. And that's what public relations would try and do through media, through 101 PR, through influencers. The ways to do it are of many.
Nice. So if someone is sitting there going, okay, that sounds amazing. I want that. I want my name and my brand name to be the one that people have thought of. How does one do that? How do you get published? Obviously, there's agencies like yours, you can DIY, but how does that work in the real world?
So the first thing that I would say is have a really good understanding of your target audience. If you don't know who you're actually wanting to talk to, do that work first before you even try and get published, because the real crux of public relations is trying to get you in front of your ideal audience. So if you have no idea who that is, or you tell me that it's men and women under the age of 80, everyone, and that's it, then try and do some refining to figure out who it is that you really want, or maybe in what pillars you really want to target them across in your business. From there, have something to say to them. Like, really think about what you want to say, have an opinion. It doesn't necessarily have to be dramatic or completely wild. Like, shock factor doesn't necessarily have to be a thing in public relations, but just make sure that you have something meaningful to say to your target audience. From there, have a crack at building out your key messages in terms of what that looks like, and then really think about how you want them to think about you when they're reading it. So that's the extra layer. So it's not just what you're saying, but what's their opinion of you going to do after they've read it? Is it going to change? Are they going to have more respect for you, more respect for your business? Are they going to be like, wow, that's really interesting, I'm going to go check out their website? Think about what the overall action you want them to take off the back of hearing you. If you got right in front of them and you could say what you're wanting to say. Once you've got your key messages, then you just need to find, and I'm making this sound really easy, but then you just need to find the outlet and the journalist that you think is saying similar sort of things, or that has the respect within your target audience that you're wanting to work with. And from there, stalk them, find them on LinkedIn, find them on social media, see what they're saying, do your research. That's what I spend most of my time doing, is researching the right people to go to on behalf of my clients to make sure that I'm getting runs on the board for them. But do your research, stalk them, and then from there, pitch.
And you make it sound so easy.
It's just that easy.
And as someone who's tried to do her own PR, this is why people pay people, because it is so much more work than you ever expected it to be. It can be done. People do DIY it, right? And they do quite well. You've got to be prepared to put the work in.
Yeah, it just takes time and it takes research, and you've just got to be willing to take rejection as well. But I think the whole point of PR is it's not always about who you know at all. It's about continuous, like not taking no for an answer. You've got to be a bit of a bulldog, and you've just got to kind of come at everyone from different directions. If a strategy is not working or you're not getting the response that you're wanting to get, change your strategy, change what you're wanting to say, come at them with something different. And then by doing all that research, you should know exactly how the journalist writes and their tone of voice. You should know the exact topics that they like to talk about. You should know what kind of spin that they want to take on it. And you should know maybe the gaps that they are currently experiencing in their story writing and where you might be able to lend a hand. So just keep at it. If you're going to DIY it, that's my best advice.
I love that. I think so many people think, oh, I have a business, I'll write a story about it and send it to the Daily Mail and hope that they get published.
No, that's marketing.
But there's so much more to it in terms of, like, as you said, like the research and the stalking and the why are you doing this in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
So you said that's marketing. Do you want to explain crystal clear difference between marketing and PR?
Oh, that's a good one. So I guess a number of my clients are just like, oh, but my business is revolutionary, so everyone's going to write about me. And I'm like, okay, I agree with you. Otherwise, I wouldn't be working with you. Like, I obviously think that there's something incredible and an incredible story to be had here, but there's so much more than just a business. You can't just go to a journalist and be like, I run a clothing brand and I'm the only brand that has this material. It's not going to work. No one cares. Exactly. No one cares. But if you go to them and say, this is why this material is going to sweat wick the fastest out of any other fitness brand in Australia, that's going to change their opinion. And they're going to be like, oh my God, wow. And if you're targeting Daily Mail, for example, you just be like, no more crotch sweat for Australians with this new revolutionary fitness brand. Sorry to put it really blatantly, but they're the kind of words that you got to use when you're
and that's what the Daily Mail will use.
Exactly. It's all clickbait. So yeah, if you're just using words to them that you would use in your social media or on your website, and you're taking nothing that's new that anyone could just find by looking at you or going onto your site, the journalists aren't going to be interested. You're basically just marketing to them. And while sometimes that might work because you might have found the best journalist that's so interested in that product or service, it's not going to work every time. And if you want to keep your reputation in market, you're going to want to make sure you're coming back to having something to say that's not just my business is the best in the world, because everyone thinks that their business is the best in the world. And of course they are, but what else do you have to say about it and why? Yeah. And I guess that's the key difference between PR and marketing is, on top, there's so many others, but PR is basically getting someone else to market your business for you through their reputation and through them talking about their experience with your products and if they liked it or not, as well as taking your key messages that you fed to them and turning it into their own prose, versus marketing where you're telling everyone about your brand. It's a slight difference, but in the scheme of things, it's also major. Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about the Daily Mail, and this is not Daily Mail specific, but I have had many a friend with an e-commerce business and clients where articles have been picked up by similar publications, if not the same publication, that was not intended, asked for, or potentially the view that a business would like for themselves. What does one do in those kind of situations where there is media talk, commentary about your business that is not the vibe? It's not what you want.
Yes. So I love crisis management, but I wouldn't exactly call this a total crisis. First thing to do is, once you read it, just stay calm, take some deep, deep breaths, and don't do anything emotionally. Like I definitely wouldn't recommend going out on social media and pulling out the words defamation and all that kind of stuff. Just chill. The first thing that I would recommend to any client is letting me reach out to the journalist, or they reach out to the journalist and just say, hey, I've just seen this article. Thanks so much for recognizing my brand or my expertise. Really interesting commentary. I'd love the opportunity to have a chat to you. Maybe I can clear up a few things, or maybe if you'll let me, I'll even send you one of my products so that you have a chance to experience it yourself. Really look forward to hearing from you. As always, you can contact me personally on my mobile or this email address, but would love the opportunity to chat. So communication is the key. The journalists don't want to come out saying anything that's untrue, because that's not their job. And realistically, a lot of the time they're going to be interested in you trying to sway their opinion because they bite, right? It's in their interest to report fairly. So I recommend just reaching out. If you don't get a response and you have their phone number, follow up with a phone call. Like, I know that a lot of people hate calling these days, especially journalists, because it's very scary. And trust me, as a junior publicist, I know I was on the phones for 6 hours every day, doing all my pitching on the phone. Yep. But it's definitely worthwhile, especially in the instance where you feel like you've been misrepresented. So try and get them on the phone. If that doesn't work, try hitting another journalist at the same publication and just being like, I've seen this, I've tried to get in contact, but I'd love the opportunity to work with you. I'm happy to send you products. And then somewhere down the line, if you really feel like you need to, you can contact the editor as well. If all else fails, or articles continue to come out that you feel misrepresent your brand, that's when I would probably look at hiring a professional to actually have a look at a crisis comm strategy in terms of how to turn around, if it's really affecting your reputation in market, in terms of how to turn that around.
Yeah. At what size do you feel like a brand needs someone like yourself on call? At what point do you kind of get to the point where you're like, look, it's probably good to have someone in your back pocket for exciting things that are happening, but also to have someone there, because you can't really be like, hi, Eve, I'm having a crisis. Can you do stuff immediately? Like, you kind of need to have someone there. Or can you just call someone in PR and be like, I'm having a crisis. Can you fix it? When do you sort of need or get to a point where it's good to have someone on call?
Excellent question. So yeah, you actually can call a publicist and say, this has happened and it's very overwhelming and I need your help. And that's exactly what you're paying a publicist for, their expertise to be able to just jump in to the crises and be able to give you their best approach and just get it done. An example of this is many years ago, I had a client that did exactly that. A journalist had reported a death in their business and it didn't happen in their business site, and the news syndicated nationally. So they were very stressed and they contacted us and they were like, oh my God, Eve, the newspapers have reported that there was a death on site and it wasn't our business. What do we do? And myself and the team, we just had to jump on it. And we called every single paper that had printed it, both online and in print, and asked for either a correction online or a reprint for the next day news and a correction. So it took time, but that's why you contact a publicist, because there's no way that an e-commerce or any business who's not prepared for that kind of strategy would be able to undertake that while also dealing with all of the inquiries that they'd be getting on the phone that day. So absolutely, you can call a publicist and say, I'm in crises and I need you to handle it.
Well, that's good to know.
Yes, but just know that there are publicists that are crisis management trained and there are publicists who aren't or don't have a lot of experience of dealing with crises. So ask the question, if you're cold calling PR firms, how many crises have you guys dealt with? Have you dealt with one similar to this? What was the strategy? What was the result? Feel free to ask those questions. Not only do we love talking about our work, but it's good information for you to know, because then you can kind of garner if they're going to be the right publicist or firm for you.
Yeah.
What else I was going to say is I would recommend, no matter what, having a crisis strategy plan. And this is something that you can do a one-off with a publicist or a PR firm and just get it done. And then the crisis strategy would have all of the potential scenarios where your brand might be impacted, key messages, escalation points, exactly what you should say if a journalist contacts you. And it can go as granular as having a social media response to comments, you know. So if you're at the point where you feel like you and your business are at the point where you feel like you're opening yourself up to media attention and there are some contentious messages in your business or in what you're wanting to say, and you don't need a publicist for it, but obviously that's their expertise. And I would always recommend at least getting an expert to have a look over it.
Yeah.
But have a crisis plan, have your key messages drafted, have a think about that. And that way, when a crisis does happen, you can refer to that and then make a really good call on your behalf in terms of your mental capacity as well as your physical capacity, in terms of whether or not this is something you can handle based on your crisis plan, or whether or not that's something that you need to offload onto a publicist or a firm.
Yeah, fascinating. In that, you gave some really good questions to ask. Obviously, if there's a crisis and you're trying to find someone, to ask the publicist or the PR agency to see if they could handle your crisis. Are there some good questions to ask if you're just looking for someone in general?
Absolutely. With publicists, and I think with a lot of suppliers, you're going to get the feel for if you're going to be a good team from a personality perspective. So always keep that in mind. Like, are you going to be able to talk to them potentially on a daily basis? Are they the kind of person that has the communication style that you really respect? Are they firm and direct, or are they very flitty with their communications and they like to make sure that they're in touch with you across all different methods, you know, text, email? And it's no judgment. You have to pick what's going to be right for you and what you're most comfortable with, especially if you're brand new to PR. You need to find someone that you're going to really trust, because it is you putting your entire business and reputation in this person's hands.
Yeah.
So personality is a huge thing. Find someone that you vibe with, which is such, I know, a millennial term, but find someone you vibe with. It's big. And then some of the other basic ones are, have you worked in this vertical before? How many years experience do you have? What size is your team? Who would be managing my account on a day-to-day? How often do you report? What's the account function look like within your firm? Because a lot of agencies run them very differently. They report very differently. So I guess understanding the very basic minutiae of how your account is going to be managed. And I think the other big tip, and this comes from someone who worked in agencies, so I know, but the people who might present your proposal might not be the people that manage your account. So definitely that's a great question to ask, especially if they're proposing back to you, because you shouldn't get excited by the people in that room, because they're not necessarily the ones that you're going to be dealing with on a day-to-day.
Yeah, look, that's good agency advice, because that happens a lot in my world too.
Yeah. And it's disappointing, right? Because you might be sold on the idea that you're going to be working with the director of the firm, and then in reality you're working with, not that they're not a great person to work with, but you might be working with the junior of the team. And I think that's a bit misleading for agencies to do, but at the same time, it also comes down to team capacity. And obviously, a director of a firm is going to want your business, so they're going to pull in the best people for the job. And there might be better people for presenting than there would be for managing. So it's in their best interest to build the best team based on your needs for your business. Just ask the question and then you're going to know, and then your expectations are managed.
Yes, agreed.
But yeah, basic account management questions are a good thing, understanding what experience they have in that vertical and what kind of results they garnered off the back of that, what other businesses they might currently have in their remit that are similar to yours, so you can understand if there's any contentious points there that you need to be aware of. And then in particular for crisis, like if they have experience managing a crisis at all, is always a good one, because honestly, some don't have to, and like, what a life to be a publicist and not manage a crisis, but lucky them. I mean, I wish I had that, but yes.
Oh, I love that. Want help with your Facebook and Instagram ads? Remember, you can always book in a free strategy session at brightredmarketing.com.au/free-strategy-session. We'll run through your ads, see what's working and what's not, and no sales pitch, I promise. I was going to ask you, you talked about reporting. Obviously, PR is one of those ones that's a little bit harder to track, but what kind of metrics, KPIs and things should people be keeping an eye on, whether they're doing it themselves or whether they've got an agency? Like, how do you track these things?
Yeah, really good question. I can't tell you how many times I've had to explain that PR, even though we have the certain metrics that we've got, PR is going to have an effect not just in the short term, but also in the long term. And it's just not something that you can report on. While there's a lot of trust in you handing over your reputation to a publicist, there's also a lot of trust that they're going to put you where you need to be. And the results might not be something that you see immediate. There might not be an increase in website traffic. There might not be an increase in purchases of products on your site. But what a publicist can always measure is reach. So that's how many eyeballs based on where you've been published that your brand could potentially get in front of based on the publications or the outlet's readership.
Yeah.
You've got advertising value equivalent, which is basically if you were to pay for that space in the online article or in the magazine, say it's a one page. So if I secured you as a publicist, I secured your one page feature, advertising value equivalent is if you were to pay for a whole one page in that publication, what would it have cost? Because it's hard to put a figure on PR, but it's really loose and I hate it, but it's what we've got at the moment. It just kind of gives you an idea of ROI essentially, or at least something to gauge against. And then what have we said? We said reach. We have AVE or earned media value, which is essentially the same thing. And then total number of clippings. So a lot of the time we'll have a KPI if we're on a retainer or if we're on a project, we'll have a KPI of how many places we want to secure you into. So total clippings, how many is that in total? So they're the three that we can always report on. But me, myself, I never think that that's enough. So I always work with my clients to understand, okay, what is the quality of that coverage? So I'm looking at everything from, have you been featured with another brand or is it a sole feature? If it's a sole feature, obviously that's going to be upweighted more. Is the reach over 500,000, i.e. is it a national piece or is it a localized piece? Have you got product images or headshot images featured in it? Is there a link back to your site, which is a big one? So it's the answers to all of those kinds of questions. And those parameters are agreed with my clients before I get started in terms of what they find the most value in, and they get scored. But based on those parameters, if the answers to all of them are yes, then obviously the quality and the tier of that article or that clipping that I've secured you is going to be far more superior than maybe one that has half of those parameters met. So we're looking at quality as well as quantity.
Because I don't imagine the publications give you their traffic for articles and things.
A publicist will never get access to how many clicks unless it's advertorial. And you've gone through a publicist to do advertorial, which, yes, we do. I know that that's media buying and that's traditionally a marketing thing. But as I said, PR is very broad. There's lots of crossover. And we wear many hats much of the time. But unless you're doing advertorial, a publicist will never be able to give you how many clicks that article actually got. And we can never actually guarantee coverage. So while you've contracted us to help get you out there, we can write the best pitch that we've ever written in our entire life. There are so many variables when it comes to PR, whether it's the 24 news cycle. So if I'm pitching the same day that a murder happens on the river in Brisbane, I'm not going to be able to get you in. Everyone's going to be concentrating on who did it. So the 24 news cycle, it also depends on the journalist. So even though I've done my research, they might have gone away and now I have to start again and try and research another journalist. A publicist can never guarantee coverage. We're very good at it and we will always, well, I can't say we, but the collective of us will always do our very best to get you in wherever we can, but it's never guaranteed.
I think it's such a fascinating area of marketing because, I mean, it's still marketing even though it's PR, but it's like in that get your brand out into the world because it's such a really nice way of introducing a brand to new people. Like finding an article about a brand and falling in love with their story is such a nice way of meeting a brand rather than having a Facebook ad shoved in your face. But like you kind of need both. But
Absolutely.
it's such a nice way. But I imagine people have a challenge with it, with that lack of tracking and numbers. And it's just having to have the trust in the process, which I imagine is quite difficult for some people.
Yeah, the complete lack of guaranteeing coverage when they're handing over hard-earned money to a publicist, it's really scary, right? But if you've hired the right publicist and you trust them, which is essentially comes down to vibing with them. If you've handed the money over and you trust them, then trust that they will do everything in their power to get you secured coverage.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there have been instances where I have surpassed every KPI set on a project, and I worked my tiny little butt off, and I did so well on the project. And despite all of that, the client said, just haven't seen the value in this project. And I've gone, okay, explain to me what success looked like in your eyes. And they were like, okay, well, I wanted followers, or I wanted purchases, or I wanted speaking opportunities to come off the back of this PR. And I said, well, while I appreciate that, it wasn't communicated to me at the beginning. And I definitely would have recommended that PR wasn't the only strategy that you deploy within your marketing makeup to make that happen. What I've done is I've put you in front of the right people. You just have to do the work now to keep them there, and use your marketing portfolio and your social media, to keep enticing them.
It's definitely like a piece of the puzzle. It probably can in some cases be the puzzle, but I feel like it is a really big piece of a puzzle, but it certainly can't be the only piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and PR is never going to guarantee sales either. Like, it's so loose. I can get someone to a website through an earned article, but then they get to the site, and then if it takes more than a couple clicks because of the makeup of your site, you might lose them, like whatever. But that's not something within a publicist's control. So what we can do is we can get them to look at your brand, but then it has to be that you or your brand speaks loudly enough for yourself to hook them once they get to the site. So we never guarantee sales. And I know that sucks to hear, and no one's going to like that from an e-commerce perspective.
But it's the truth.
I know,
I think
but it's the truth.
The truth is more important.
The truth is more important than lying to everyone and saying, oh yeah, PR absolutely guarantees sales. Yes, it's a very happy byproduct of securing some amazing coverage. And obviously the publicist has done a great job if you are securing sales off the back of that piece. But it's not something it's not a KPI that is ever in a publicist's control. So it's never something that we ever agree to be measured against.
I feel like PR and Facebook retargeting ads or Google retargeting ads would be a very nice mix. Like, you do the PR, you get the people to do the Googling and the website, and they check it out. They're like, hey, that looks cool. And then you get them with the ads at the end.
Absolutely. As you said, it's a puzzle piece within the overall mix.
Yeah.
But if done right and well, then alongside some great retargeting and great social media content and a wonderful website, alongside obviously great products, which is why you got into the media in the first place.
Yeah.
That's all going to be the perfect combination to make sure you rise up the ranks and you get that brand recall.
I love that. Just quickly before we get into the last couple of questions, is there like a good success story you can share of like someone who's done PR with you that like got all the good juicy things that they wanted or that you wanted?
What are you talking about? Every client that comes on board gets
like
everything
if it's
that they want.
Especially good one. Obviously, they all get good results because you're fantastic.
I'm just kidding. Look, this isn't to sound snobby, but I have a lot of great success stories. But one of my favorite clients that I've ever had, and who continues to be an incredible client to this day, even though they're not currently under my remit, is Rachel Grant from Hello Harry. Hello Harry is a luxury pet perfumery. They also sell some beautiful lifestyle products like dog bowls and placemats and things like that. And they're even doing toys now, I think. So they've, even just in the short time that they've been around, they've increased their catalog a lot. But they came on board, and obviously an incredible product like perfume for dogs and cats. Are you serious? I'm here for it. Like, here I am. This is the kind of business that I dream of working for. Anyway, their number one goal was to get a huge national piece, ideally in a lifestyle publication, and ideally to get some sales off the back of it. Obviously, they knew, because I'd managed their expectations, saying I can't guarantee sales, but if you want a huge national piece with national reach with a link back at the end of your article, then that's my number one KPI. That's what I will get for you. So it took work, because obviously they're a small business. No one even knew that dog perfume even existed. So there was an education piece there as well. And like so many questions around sensitivity of skin and eyes and smell and things like that. And obviously they're incredible. So they did all the work. They had all of the questions answered already. So it was easy from my perspective because they were ready for it. On top of that, but they were the dream client. If I asked them to write something or I asked them to approve a body of media materials that I had written for them, they had turned it around really quickly just because they were so excited by the potential that it offered. So we were able to get so much done. We were able to be reactive if we needed to be. Honestly, freaking dream client. Anyway, I secured them in Daily Mail after attempting probably bordering on 20 times to get them in. I tried different journalists. I tried different strategies. And I know that that makes me sound like I didn't do a good job, but sometimes it is just that hard. Like you're competing, especially in the lifestyle space or the luxury and fashion and beauty and that kind of space. You're competing with so many brands, so much noise. Obviously, dog perfume's going to stick out a bit, no doubt, but you have to find a dog lover or a pet lover, and then you're almost having to target their pet through them. And then there's also an element of them having to try the product, to trust it, and then to get them to smell it, because it's like blind buying perfume. It's hard to do that. You have to know your notes and you have to be all right with a recommendation, or you have to have gone into a store to smell it yourself. So anyway, got them into Daily Mail. And even Rachel herself will say, you know, I know that Daily Mail is not the epitome of success, but it met all of their parameters that we set. National, lifestyle, and it was a piece about how one of their doggy perfumes was a dupe for a very well-known luxury perfume that cost upwards of $400, and their dupe was $55 for a small bottle from Hello Harry. And then I also tagged on to the fact that there were hundreds of comments on their social media that owners were also wearing the doggy perfume. So not only do we have a luxury dupe for a very well-known fragrance that everyone was obsessing over at the time, but we also had owners wearing doggy perfume because of the cost of living crisis, right? You've got to do what you can if you've got a great perfume at your hand.
This all comes back to what you said at the start. You've got to have a point of difference. You've got to have a target market. You've got to have a reason.
You've got to have something to say.
Hello Harry came on the podcast not that long ago, and she's so fantastic at what she does.
Yeah, like incredible.
That's what you need to be successful in business and to make the most of PR.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, dream client, love them both. And like, it's also the mixture of both Rach and Grant's expertise, right? Because Grant has that interiors luxury experience, which is adding value to the brand from the design of the products. And then Rach is obviously the day-to-day absolute mastermind. She's the one that you see on socials all the time. And she's also the one that you're talking to when you send her an email. But the two of them combined, perfect best friends, but also perfect business partners as well. And their founder story is stunning too. I had so much to work with. I think that's why they were such a great client. And on top of that, they understood everything that I was telling them. They soaked it in, they listened, and then they were ready and raring to go. And everything that I came at them with, they took on and they actioned. And it was just so amazing to have a client that was just so willing to take on board everything that I said and went about it with gusto.
Yeah, I love that. We'll just wrap up and get into our last couple of questions. Do you have a favorite podcast?
Oh, a favorite podcast? That is a really great question. I listen to a few, and I'm not going to even lie to you. When I mostly only listen to audio when I'm at the gym, and it's mostly music. But I like Just the Gist podcast. That's really fun. One of the other ones that I listen to on and off is a friend of mine. He's based out of the US, and it's called Too Cool for School by Dylan Howard. That one's fun. He talks to a lot of other publicists and experts. So if you're wanting to learn more about PR, you can go and listen to that. And of course, Bright Minds of eCommerce.
Why, thank you. Do you have a favorite business book?
Business book? My God. Yes, I do. Why didn't anybody tell me this shit before?
I like it already.
Wit and Wisdom from Women in Business by Marcella Allison and Laura Gale. This was a gift from a very good friend of mine at the time, and I read it and I thought it was brilliant. So I love it.
that. I'll have to add that to my list. Do you have any strategies or habits that you follow each day to help you stay on track in business?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a few. I will go to the gym every day. It's a really great mental release for me, whether or not it's weight training, cardio, boxing, Pilates. I'll do something to move my body. It's not just about the look or anything like that. It's just about exercising my brain in a different way. So yeah, move my body for 30 minutes every day. I drink at least 2 liters of water every day because keeping hydrated is the key to making sure that your brain functions at its best. I know that one sounds hilarious, but I actually truly believe
it's mostly water up there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Most of our body's made up of water. And the other one is to make sure my sleep hygiene is really, really good. So that involves not drinking any caffeine after 2 p.m. in the afternoon, making sure I'm not using any screens of a nighttime an hour before bed. I have my sleep mask on to make sure that I don't wake up at nighttime from any light. I have my loop earbuds in to make sure I can't hear anything. And on top of that, I'm getting a minimum 8 hours of sleep every night, because if I don't, I am not functioning at my best and I'm not very nice to be around.
Yeah, no, neither am I. If people want to visit you, what's the best way for them to do that and to get in contact?
Oh, probably Instagram. Eden Communications AU is my handle, but you can honestly contact me anywhere on my website or Instagram, or I think my number is even on my website. So you can even just give me a text, and I'm happy to talk about business, but I'm also just happy to have a wine or a coffee and just chat if that's what you need as well. I'm always here for anyone who needs help or just wants to chat.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Bright Minds of eCommerce podcast. As always, you'll find the show notes at brightredmarketing.com.au/podcast. Thanks for listening.